Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the NASC Treat webinar. It's great that everybody can join. We had over 400 people sign up for the webinar. Really appreciate you taking the time to attend. If you're in, I've got a couple announcements and introductions and then a bonus for you. So first want to introduce everybody who's on the call in case there's any really hard questions. They'll go to the team who can give you the right answers. Ryan Cargo, Chief Operating Officer with NASC, been here over 20 years. Katie Brenner. Katie, how long have you been here? A long time.
Almost 7.
One of our senior people, and then Jennifer Gornert, who I'm sure, there's a lot of regulators who I really appreciate joining on the webinar. Also, Katie and Jennifer were both former regulators. So thank you everyone for attending. The bonus that I have for you is if you took the time to attend the webinar here and you want to attend our annual conference and you're not an NASC member, sign up at the member rate and we'll sign you off. So appreciate you attending the webinar. If you want to attend the conference, you can attend as a member. Even if you're not a member, we'll sign you off. So thank you very much for attending. With that, we'll get into the why everybody's here, and that's the introduction of the NASC Treat Program. I'm Bill Bookout, president and one of the founders of NASC. Really appreciate, again, everybody's attention. We've kind of split the webinar into 4 segments. I want to give you just a very brief background of NASC and why we would expand into treats, what we do now also, and then expanding bolt on treats. We want to review treats on how they're defined and regulated. I think before you talk about a product or a product category, you've got to understand what the requirements are, and then talk about the treat program and the requirements specifically of treats, and then also use of the NASC quality seal, leveraging the seal and the audit, both for existing members who are audited as well as new members that have treats specifically. And then a summary with key takeaways, things that you should remember, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end for people that are taking screenshots or slides. We'll make these slides available in the presentation, so don't worry about taking a bunch of notes or taking screenshots of the presentation. We'll make a PDF file available. So you can have that after the presentation. With that, I just want to talk about a brief background of NASC and why we decided to expand into treats. Again, we have 400 people on the program, and it's a variety of backgrounds. There are NASC members here. There are people who are not NASC members. There are preferred suppliers, contract manufacturers, product providers, regulators. Again, thank you very much to the regulators who are attending. So there are people who know about NASC and may not know as much about NASC. So I just want to give you a few key points. We're a nonprofit, just like AAFCO. We have no regulatory authority except for our own members. We do have an agreement that when members join NASC, and it'll be the same for treats, you've got to agree to abide by the standards appropriate for the products that you sell. We do recommend regulatory policy for non-nutritional health supplements. That's the majority of what we cover, products that are similar to human dietary supplements. But there's no category for dietary supplements for animals. So health supplements, similar to human dietary supplements for non-nutritional health benefit. We do have food supplements or nutritional supplements intended to provide nutritional benefits to all animals as a component of a complete and balanced diet: vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids. We only focus on non-human food chain animals, dogs, cats, and horses, and now we will also include treats under our umbrella. We don't do complete and balanced diets, and we don't have any plans to do complete and balanced diets. There are other organizations that do a great job at that. Pet Food Institute, PFI, AFI, do a great job. So we don't do complete and balanced diets, so anything in bags or cans we don't intend to cover. The treat program, or our intentions to include treats under NASC, it was announced at the AAFCO mid-year meeting in New Orleans last January, and we did say we were going to make an official announcement February 26th. That's the purpose of this webinar. We've always embraced a transparent process, working with CVM, the states, as well as AAFCO. So we have a very good, I think, and close working relationship with regulators as well as AAFCO. And the approach that we've always taken has been one not of self-regulation, but co-regulation. So co-regulation, really we depend on, and I thank all the regulators because the success that NASC has had really in accomplishing the four priorities that are listed below. If it weren't for a cooperative approach with regulators, both state and federal regulators, we would not have made the progress that we have. So again, to all the regulators who are attending, and I think there were 30 or 40 that signed up. So thank you very much and really appreciate our working relationship. What's the results? We want to accomplish many of the same things that you all want to accomplish. We want to help facilitate and prioritize regulatory compliance, fair and level playing field, uniform regulatory environment. And we want to enhance compliance through education, not issuing stop sale orders because people don't want to have economic disruption to their business. They want to do the right things, but there are people out there who don't follow the rules. The worst ones are they don't know, or they know what the rules are, they do it anyway, and they make the industry look bad, and they're a concern to regulators just as they are to us. We want to promote expeditious and equitable, consistent application of enforcement, fair and level playing field, the same as for AAFCO. So why would we expand and include treats? Treats are a growing area in terms of consumer demand. However, there seems to be increasing confusion about treats, and I think it's getting worse, not better. Hopefully, we can help make that better. And through educational programs like this, give people more of an understanding of how treats are regulated and what the allowable parameters are and how they can effectively conduct commerce and benefit their business, ultimately benefit the animals. So how the products are regulated, particularly for the ingredients that are allowed in treats, and we'll take a bit of a deeper dive into that, but also allowable claims or benefit statements based on the intended use or benefits of the product, because that's how the law is written. It's the intended use primarily that determine how the product is regulated, either as a nutritional product, a food product, or as for a non-nutritional health benefit. Okay. So why treats and why expand into treats? This has actually been on our radar screen for a while. If you recall back 2015, there was an issue, and this was after the melamine issue, which we also helped with through our NEARS or post-market surveillance system, adverse event reporting system. But after the melamine issue, there was a treat issue that popped up back in 2015. There's an announcement, there's the link, that there were a number of illnesses associated with various jerky treats, and the reports were more than 6,200 dogs, 26 cats, and some people experienced negative health consequences, which resulted in 1,140 unfortunate deaths in canines. So we actually follow up with FDA and we talk to them pretty routinely. FDA asked us, have you ever considered expanding your post-market surveillance system, NEARS, which is our adverse event reporting system, to include treats? And we said no, but we'd certainly be open to that. However, when the Farm Bill passed originally in 2014, and then as it went, there were more and more hemp and CBD products on the market. And so we just simply didn't have the bandwidth. So treats went down the priority list in favor of hemp and CBD because it was burning hotter and brighter than anything else at the time. And then we had the COVID disruption. So we really didn't have the bandwidth to address treats. And there were other priorities that simply didn't fall off the radar screen, but it went down on the priority list. So now we feel like the timing is right, again, to expand and include treats under our scope. So reasons to expand and include treats: consumer demand. Treats is a pretty big area. Estimates are somewhere between 12 and $14 billion in the industry. It's certainly growing, but there's confusion, I think, partially driven by the people marketing the products, by industry, trying to respond to consumer demand, as often happens. So increasing confusion from a lack, I think, of a clear understanding of how treat products are actually regulated. And to a certain extent, it's industry driven. So shame on us for continuing to perpetuate or even foster additional confusion in the industry, which causes the regulators confusion as well, and it isn't good for anybody. So again, post-market surveillance and risk management, really our adverse event reporting system, which is integral and really, I would say, a cornerstone to everything that we do, it's not a safety database, but it is the most advanced system of post-market surveillance and risk management for the products that are under our scope, literally in the world. And again, our ingredient risk reports are made available to regulators on request. They're also recognized by the Veterinary Drug Directorate in Canada as one criteria in consideration of adding an ingredient to the list of acceptable substances for natural health products for animals. And actually, we're recognized in the Canadian Food and Drugs Act, which is our equivalent of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in the from FDA in the States. So quality and compliance, again, quality products are always, I think, the most important consideration, in a product, and compliance, quality raw materials, quality processes result in quality products and consistency, which ultimately, it gains consumer trust and confidence. That's good for the animals, good for the retailers, good for the participants. It's good for everybody, including regulators. So how are treats defined and regulated? So to talk about a category, you've really got to define and have a common understanding of what that means and what the definitions are. So is your first big summary takeaway. Treats, that word makes you a food. Okay. Treats are regulated as a food, and you've got to consider what's the intended purpose of the product for food. All right. So I'm just talking about food. I'm not talking about, health supplements or non nutritionally beneficial products. I originally had that in the slides here, but we took it out because the compliance team and I agree that this is a treat program. If you have any questions about other products that are health supplements that are not food, we can take that in another session, or you can email us directly in our contacts, and emails are at the end of the presentation. But food labels, and this is directly from AAFCO, okay, and it's consistent with PFLM. Everything you see here is going to be consistent with AAFCO, PFLM, and all the recommendations for food products, right? But the purpose of the product has to be determined. So you can have a complete food, right? That is self-explanatory, bag or a can. You can have a veterinary prescription diet. I'm going to skip treat for a second. Now, the reason I'm going to skip treat is you don't want to have a treat that would really be a food supplement, dog food supplement, or maybe even a mixer or a topper, or something for a specialty pet. So this is very important. Treats, one, are food, and two, how are they defined? They're intended to be given occasionally, all right? Not consistently, occasionally. So we give one every day or twice a day for vitamins and minerals or other nutrients that would contribute nutritionally. That'd be a food supplement, right? So given occasionally for enjoyment, training, entertainment, or other purposes like a dental treat, for example, and are not generally intended or represented to be complete food or a food supplement. Okay. So you can't have nutrient guarantees. We'll talk about that more in a second, but occasionally enjoyment, training, and entertainment important, occasionally being the most important, right? That's a differentiator. So you've got to be consistent with the intended purpose of the product. Okay. So a couple different definitions for treats. How are treats defined? This is straight from AAFCO, and I give you the reference here. So for pets in the AAFCO official publication, the online version, which I looked up in putting this presentation together, it's listed on page 138 in the section PF4A1D, species treat, so dog treat, cat treat for food products or pets or specialty pets are provided occasionally for enjoyment, training, or other purposes not generally recognized. So you saw that before, right? On the previous slide. Straight at AAFCO, and there's the reference. Horses are different because they're livestock. So AAFCO, now the horses that we deal with may be, considered like companion animals. They're not livestock, out in the field like we had in Wyoming, for wrangling cattle. So, they're members of the family or performance horses. So AAFCO does not have a specific definition for horse treats. However, the important point here is they are still regulated as food. And there is an official publication reference, which is given here. Again, I got it from the online version. So the purpose statement of a feed intended as a treat for a designated species exclusive of pets and specialty pets shall include the word treat or snack. There's another word that causes you to be regulated as a food. We have some others for other training programs that we've done: biscuit, treat, snack, cookie, jerky, things like that. Food terms, right? So the takeaway here, and what I want to emphasize, is one word can change the way a product is regulated. So treats and snacks are regulated as food. They're defined as food. Okay. They're regulated as food. So your claims down in the second bullet point and the sub bullet point, the claims should be consistent with those allowed for food and the intended purpose of the product. All right. So Jennifer was big on this when we were going over this presentation, and the verbiage. So we had it, exactly correct, which was, if you're going to have a really impactful nutritional benefit, then you're probably not going to give it occasionally or intermittently as a reward or training. It's probably a food supplement. All right. Ingredients are required to be approved for use in animal food. They should be listed in AAFCO Chapter 6, and they should be included for the approved purpose as cited in the AAFCO OP, the official publication, or referenced in the CFRs. Let me give you examples that we've seen and run across recently. If you use turmeric or curcumin or other ingredients, and these are also in our PFLM training, for labeling pet food, that AAFCO presents as tricky areas, right? I think it's section 582.10 and 582.20, where something can be approved as a spice, flavoring, or seasoning, as is the case for turmeric or curcumin. But if you use it for any other purpose, like its anti-inflammatory benefits, it may have anti-inflammatory benefits, but that's not an approved purpose. And that specific claim or benefit statement is not approved or consistent with allowable claims for food products. Okay. So you not only have to be careful that the ingredients are approved for use in animal food, or the ingredients are used for the approved purpose. Other examples: coenzyme Q10, MSM, milk thistle, SAMe, other ingredients for non-nutritional benefits. You might have the greatest cardiovascular support product in the world with coenzyme Q10 and hawthorn, but those are not nutritional benefits. And if you call that product a treat, you're going to have a misbranded and adulterated food. Okay. And that's not unique to treats. It's also consistent with any other food product. All right. So what are the claim boundaries for treats or food? All right. They need to be consistent with the intended purpose. So you've seen this slide before. It's in all the AAFCO presentations back for the last 15 years that I've seen or participated in, from Section 201F in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So the boundaries are articles intended as food or drink for man or other animals, and articles used as components of any such articles. And FDA cites case law and has defined articles for food, or the claims boundaries or allowable boundaries, or the boundaries of the field of play, if you will, for claims for taste, aroma, nutritional value, or technical effect, like a preservative. So the boundaries for treats, which are food, or exactly that: taste, nutritional contribution, consistent with the intended purpose, remember, given occasionally, or you can have dental claims through mechanical or abrasive action. All right. So for treats, these are really the acceptable claims, right? Anything else on a treat is probably going to be problematic, right? And you could run the risk of not being able to register a product, or, getting a stop sale notice from a state, or, depending on what your claims are, if they're for some, if they're egregious claims, you don't want to get a warning letter from FDA. All right. So if you have any questions on that, you can chime in with questions, or we do webinars. There's going to be an entire on the 19th of May at our annual conference. This is going to be a day-long discussion sponsored by Venable at our annual conference on claims, research, substantiation of claims. So you might want to check that out. All right. So summary: functional treats. That's the thing. I see this more and more, in products that are popping up. Somebody has a functional treat, right? There really is no gray area for functional treats, or functional treats have health benefits, right? That's a food. So a functional treat is really a descriptive term invented by marketing people because it sounds cool. And it's problematic because functional suggests it may be a function outside of those allowed by, the nutritional benefits, taste, aroma, nutritive value, or technical effect, as defined in 201F on the previous slide. So you really can't have a product, or you don't want to run the risk of product that falls in two camps. You've got a non-nutritional health benefit like calming or joints or cardiovascular, plus a nutritional benefit, right? So treats with unapproved ingredients, and I know I'm restating this, but I'm restating it because it's important. So treats with unapproved ingredients or approved ingredients utilized for unapproved purposes, or claims outside of those that we cited on the previous slide, are problematic and could get you in trouble. So don't have a product with nutritional and non-nutritional health benefits. So as an industry, I think that this is a confusing term. It's confusing for the industry. Confusion leads to inconsistency, which nobody likes, especially regulators and the industry. Pet food is a national industry and cannot operate in an environment of inconsistent regulation. Let me say that again. A pet food industry is a national industry. It's different than livestock. You have distribution centers that can't segment their inventories to not ship to one state, ship to other states. A pet food industry cannot operate in an inconsistent regulatory environment. Okay. You don't want that. The regulators don't want that. And we don't want that either. So we should really focus on eliminating functional treats. Treats are food and they ought to maintain in that category. All right. I know there's questions coming in on the chats. We'll have time to answer those at the end, and I'm seeing them pop up, but I don't want to distract myself. We'll have plenty of time at the end, and if we don't, feel free to email. All right. Treat program and requirements and use of the NASC quality seal. Next section. All right. So the treat program, because the quality seal, the same one that you're used to seeing, which is the yellow seal at the bottom, will be available to use for treat products as well as nutritional supplements or food supplements or health supplements, non-nutritionally beneficial, right? So a company is required to be an NASC member. To join NASC, you can't just pay your money, join NASC, and have a nice day, use the seal. You've got to qualify for membership. So you have to have a direct conversation with either Ryan Cargo or me to make sure that we can help you, that your products fall under the scope of what we address, and there aren't any issues that would cause you potential economic disruption to your business, meaning you don't want to get a failure to register notice from a state. You're making a mistake you don't realize you're making. So if there are issues when we have this initial conversation, we will point those out, like functional treats for calming, a calming treat. You're going to have trouble with that, right? So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So want to make sure the products are properly positioned, either as food supplements, health supplements, or treats. They're required to verify your company, will follow NASC Treat CGMPs. Our Treat CGMPs are a little bit different than 21 CFR 507, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA for animal food. So we reviewed the NASC CGMPs, and I say they're, NASC or 21 CFR 507 plus. Plus what? We reviewed this with our entire compliance team. We also reviewed with industry participants in the treat area, specifically thanked Lori Chavez, who's, I think, Vice President Regulatory with Central Garden and Pet. Lori, if you're not Vice President, I probably gave you a promotion, so hopefully you get a raise. But Lori Chavez, other industry participants also reviewed the CGMP. So the point I want to make is, we didn't set the bar so high nobody can get over it. One of the things that is a requirement, though, is participation in our adverse event reporting system, specifically for treat products, in case there's an unapproved, or not an unapproved, but in case there's an unanticipated event, that something happens that was nobody caught, right? That's why quality control is always a process of continuous improvement, never a destination, always a journey. So Participation in the adverse event reporting system for post-market surveillance and having an early warning system in place. So if there ever was anything that, hopefully there wouldn't be, but if there was any negative health consequence, like the chicken jerky treat thing that happened, sometime back 10 years ago, 15, 12 years ago, that we'd have an early warning system for that. Our system has caught a couple things early on, salmonella and a couple other things before it got out of control. So then that's what it's really designed to do. So there are also a few other requirements, but again, the bar's not so high that nobody can get over it. Again, Lori helped us review that. We appreciate the input. So I was going to jump out and go to our website, but I just decided to take screenshots. So if you're a treat supplier, and regulators will also have access to this through the regulator port, but there's really going to be nothing different here than you haven't seen or know about, from AAFCO. We may present it a little differently, and if we can answer questions, we're happy to do that. But the three important points on here are labeling treats, and there's examples which I'll go into in a second on specifically how to label treats, both before PFLM and after PFLM, and then also horse treats. Adverse event reporting compliance, NAERS, that's NASC Adverse Event Reporting System, and then the NASC Treat CGMPs. There's nothing in there that's a matter of national security. If anybody wants to see the NASC Treat CGMPs, happy to share those with you. Just email us and we'll tell you what they are. You can get to them if you're a member. Now, this is members only section stuff. So regulators will have access and NASC member companies will have access. But if anybody's on the call and you want a copy of the Treat CGMPs, NASC Treat CGMPs, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't send those. Okay. Then there's some other categories with information that we think could be helpful. So treats specifically. Treats for dog and cats, there's a description. And then again, labeling, there's a specific document that we have for labeling treats post PFLM and then pre PFLM. So both are covered for people that are doing treat labels or updating their food labels on pet food, pet supplements, food supplements, or treats. I'd suggest do that as quickly as you can. We've talked about that at the AAFCO training programs on PFLM, and there's a number of them, not only at the AAFCO meeting, but, Pet Food Forum, the NASC annual conference, webinars that we've done on that. So specifically for treats for dogs and cats, there's a section under labeling specific. And then also treats for horses. So again, a labeling guidance document for horses. And we talked about in a previous slide, the definition for horses as livestock treats is different than it is and excludes specifically dogs and cats or pets, specialty pets as well. So this is straight from the new section of the website. So requirements for the NASC quality seal, which I'm sure a number of people on here are NASC members, you're audited members, you want to know when and how you can use the quality seal on treats. This is it. All right. Existing members that have been audited and currently display the seal do not require a full NASC CGMP audit. However, you do have to submit new documents for the treat program because right now we don't have treats under our scope. So you got to submit new membership applications, specifically identify yourself as you're going to include treats. You may have nutritional and health supplements now. I got another couple categorical breakdowns in a following slide here, but new documents are required, and then we confirm you're a member in good standing. It does require an audit, but it's not a full-on audit. It's a desk audit. So we're not going to come out, even if we did an audit on the ground and audited your manufacturing or distribution, fulfillment, warehousing, and operations. You don't have to do an audit. This is a virtual audit, a desk audit at $500, and then you can bolt it on. We're going to review your labels for treats. That includes your website or any other forms of labeling. So website, literature, product labels, trade show materials, social media. Remember, anything connected to your company you're responsible for and can be held accountable for in terms of labeling and claims. So we'll check that out. We'll verify your data entry that treats are in the adverse event reporting system. We will check your vendor audit or vendor qualification if you don't manufacture your own treats or use a different supplier, which you may. as opposed to health supplements or even food supplements. So we'll check that. So those are the three big buckets for existing NASC members. So let me reiterate: can't just automatically use the NASC seal on treats, even if you're an audited member. It shouldn't be a high bar to clear. Now, you might be thinking, well, our audit comes up in another month or two. Well, we'll handle that as a component of your regular audit, so you're not double paying, or so we'll be very fair in terms of companies. If your audit's going to run out, if you do have this additional audit for treats, then that's a bolt-on addition, and that'll be consistent with wherever your existing audit comes up due. And it's a 2-year audit, so whenever you come due, if it's a year from now, your treats will come up again, and we'll just include that in the audit when it comes up for re-audit. Okay. New members with treats only. Okay. You have to join NAC, be a member in good standing. And again, you got to go through all the onboarding requirements. When somebody joins NASC, there's about an hour and a half worth of onboarding that someone from our compliance team. So any company is assigned to one of our compliance people as they are your point person, or you have account responsibility. So it's not AI, it's not a virtual chat group. You get a live human being to talk to, and they'll take you through onboarding requirements based on the scope of what products that you have or want under the NASC umbrella. So if you have treats and you want to join NASC, then labeling and claims, you have to have a written quality manual. A lot of companies don't make their own products, so they think, well, we don't have to have a written quality manual because our contract manufacturer has one. Wrong. FDA doesn't know, nor do states know, who makes the product. They only know who offers the product for sale, the supplier of record or the guarantor. So you have to have a written quality manual that does vendor qualification and confirms in writing that you verified they're acting responsibly for all the requirements for things that happen upstream, right? But you're responsible for labeling, claims, product registrations, adverse event reporting. God forbid you ever had a recall. So you're required to verify all the operations with written SOPs for the operations that you perform, and verifying all the operations that you depend on somebody else to perform. So got to have a written quality manual whether you make the product or not. And we help you with that, right? So we have templates. If you don't have one, we'll help you put one together. And it's just good, solid business practice to do that anyway. Again, quality, I think, is the most important consideration in treats or any other product. So, you want to be sure that your ducks in a row and you're producing quality products consistently that the animal's going to respond to if you do have a nutritional benefit or a dental benefit, and you'll create a resale and new business for your company, right? Data entry in the adverse event reporting system. So again, those are the three big bucket areas that we check, and that's what we'll look at during the audit. May or may not be an on-site audit depending on the scope of your operations. If you never touch that product, you don't make it, and you use a fulfillment service, a 3PL, then we're not going to come to your company and do an administrative audit for, administrative process. Is a waste of our time and money and yours as well. We will, however, check your quality manual and make sure you've got good vendor qualification, verifying everything upstream, again, in writing, and that you've checked it out, and you're making sure that that company is following the GMPs that are required of and pertain to the particular market segment that you're participating in this case, animal food. Cost depends on the scope of your operation, again, so I can't give you a specific example of how much does it cost. Again, it depends on the scope of your operation. We'll cover that with you, but I just don't have time to go through that here. Okay. But if you have questions, again, we'll offline, different meeting, email. Okay. Summary and key takeaways. So again, this is the same slide you saw before. Why is it in here twice? Because it's important, and I don't want you to forget it. Functional treats. There's really no gray area for pet treats with health benefits. If you have a function other than a nutritional contribution consistent with the intended use or purpose of the product, right? Occasional intermittent training reward, then those are your boundaries, the same as they are for food for any other product: taste, aroma, nutritional value, technical effect. Anything else is probably not a claim that you should make. It is problematic, and you'll likely get in trouble, meaning you could suffer some kind of notice from a regulator and cause you a problem. Or you don't want to get red tagged or have yellow tape across your set at a retailer, because that's not a happy thing for anybody, right? So you can't have a dual purpose product. Your claims are within those boundaries that are allowable for food. And again, they're reiterated here. And again, if you use approved ingredients, you gotta use them for the approved purpose or benefit. You can't have something that's an approved ingredient in section 582.10 or 20 as a spice, flavoring, or seasoning, and say it has any benefit other than that. Okay. So again, I strongly encourage everybody, we ought to eliminate the term or use of the term functional treat, because I think it's just confusing and it doesn't benefit anyone. It's, marketing term. So we should get rid of it, in my opinion, before it gets further out of control than it already is. So, summary: NASC will cover 3 product categories: health supplement, similar to a human dietary supplement, not regulated as food, not for nutritional benefits. The law specifically says articles other than food, emphasis added. Okay. So another topic, another seminar. This is a treat webinar. Food supplements, consistent with AAFCO, regulated as food. Treats, consistent with AAFCO, regulated as food. Okay. NASC membership will include these 3 categories now. In addition to health supplements, food supplements will include treats. Some companies can have treats and supplements, maybe health supplements, maybe food supplements and treats, or you can have treats only. Different membership levels. The cost of joining NASC is less if you just have treats, but again, it depends on a number of other factors. The board of directors set that fee structure. Separate conversation if you want to talk. Again, you got to talk to Ryan or I anyway, and we can go over all that with you, because again, we want to make sure that we can help you. So, NASC seal requires an audit for treats. Once the audit's completed, it can be used on all the products above, including treats, but it's important. And again, I want to reemphasize existing audited members. You can't just automatically, because you're an audited member, start using the NAC seal on treats. You've got to check those boxes, submit the new application, members accountability guidelines, and then review the treats, enter them in the adverse event reporting system, check the boxes on the 507 plus CGMPs, primarily with vendor qualification. Okay. So refer back to slide 19 if you have questions. You got to check all those boxes. Okay. Regulators, again, have access to the website. You'll also have access to the treat program. Again, we've always approached this issue from co-regulation, not self-regulation. And again, thank you very much to the regulators who've helped us along the way. Again, we wouldn't be where we are as an industry if it wasn't for your help and cooperation. So again, we really appreciate that. A lot of regulators look at the NASC website to see if companies are legitimately using the NASC seal, or somebody using the seal that shouldn't be, or are they claiming to be a member and they're not. So again, also appreciate that. And I'll show you some examples of how the website's changed, and then we'll go to questions. NASC.cc, go to the membership tab at the top. Primary supplier, that's the brand or the company marketing the product, the guarantor, supplier of record. And then view membership list, that's the button. And if you hit that list, this is what it looks like. And this is a change. So audited for supplements, if you see the green check mark beside the company, then they've been audited. They can use the seal. There's an additional column now that identifies companies that also have been audited for treats. Until they've been audited, they won't, and there's nobody with a green check mark in there because it's a brand new system. Today's the announcement, but this is the new website and what it looks like. So the company name and contact information, it's a hot link, so you can get to that. So can regulators. And then the member type, what do they have? Supplements only. That's what everybody's going to have right now. As we again have treat members come in, then it'll say supplements and treats, and then what's the species of the products that they focus on: dog or cat, dog, cat, and horse, or others. So that's the new members list on the website. That's up and running right now. And with that, I think that's the last one. Yeah. With that, here's everybody's contact information. I again want to thank you for attending. I know it's some people on this call are going to think, well, it's drinking from a fire hose, a lot of information, and I hope you get it all. Presentation will be available to everybody. So, and if you've got additional questions, you can reach out to anybody on, the NASC team. Great team, and they make me look good, and I'm very appreciative of that. Here's everybody's email address. You'll recognize Katie, Jennifer, Miriam, and Kelly, former state regulators. Giselle, very experienced, lucky to have her. And then Ryan, you've been around 20 years. And myself. Again, NASC's 25th anniversary. If you multiply that by dog years times 7, we're 175 years old. So with that, I'll pause and go to questions. And then I think Jenny was going to put up a slide on the annual conference. So, all right. So let me take
I can read questions for you, Bill, if that would be easier.
Yeah, you can read questions,
Okay.
Jenny. That'd be good.
First question, can you clarify more about the given occasionally for treats? What does this mean for a dental treat feeding guideline that might say treats per day? Is daily occasional?
Well, I mean, again, it's the purpose of the product. I think you can have it if it's a treat and that's your benefit, as a dental benefit, you can give that product daily consistent with the purpose statement, right? So that's a good question because, it's really how does that affect your feeding directions or directions for use? If it's occasional, but you need, you brush your teeth every day, then I think that's fine, consistent with the benefits. If you have a nutritional guarantee on there, then it might be hard to substantiate a nutritional contribution only giving something occasionally. So that's a good question. I hope that answers. And again, Jennifer, Katie, Ryan, if you have additional thoughts or you want to comment, please feel free to jump in.
Okay, next question. What is the reasoning behind prohibiting dual category products?
Because it's illegal. It's a violation of state and federal law. You got to be clean, one or the other. You can have a nutritional benefit or you can have a non-nutritional health benefit. That's what the law says.
All right. Next question. If we are a supplement primary supplier, do we have to register as a treat primary supplier also?
If you're a supplement supplier, meaning nutritional and health supplements, I mean, it's all about compliance with the CGMPs that apply. So
I think what they're asking is do they have to become a member if they already are a supplement NASC member? Do they also have to register as a treat member?
Yes, you need new paperwork to have treats in addition to your supplements. If you're the brand, if you're a preferred supplier, contract manufacturer, then that answer's different because you don't have a brand. But if you're a brand, the company that has a brand, you're selling it to the marketplace. Yes, I think it's slide 19. New paperwork, and yeah, let us know that you want to add treats.
All right. For the treats labeling, is it possible to label the treats according to the AAFCO Pet Food Labeling Guide? Are there some differences between the NASC guidance and the AAFCO guide?
No. No, same.
Okay. Next question. What do you consider a food supplement?
Food supplement is a product that contains approved ingredients for taste, aroma, nutritional value, or technical effect as defined under 201F of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Consistent with state law and AAFCO recommendations, by the way. It has a nutritional benefit.
All right. The next question is the use of the word cookie allowed or not?
On a food, cookies, food, chocolate chip cookies, Oreo cookies. Cookies is a food term, or at least we view it that way, like biscuit, treat, snack. Cookie, it's in our guidance document. Cookie's a food term. Jerky.
All right. Next question. How is nutritional value differentiated as a food supplement versus a treat? Can you speak to the scope of CFR 201F that states provides taste, aroma, or nutritional value or technical effect? Does it just depend on the types of ingredients?
Well, again, that would be a nutritional value question, right? Food supplement, usually given once a day as like a vitamin and mineral supplement, for example, or an essential fatty acid supplement, salmon oil. You give it every day, twice a day, squirt it on top of the food, or give a vitamin and mineral product. So it's a product intended to make a nutritional contribution consistently in the case of a food supplement, right? It's not occasional or given for training or rewards or intermittently, right? Got to contain AAFCO approved ingredients and contain utilized for the approved purpose.
All right. Next question. To clarify, ingredients are still limited to AAFCO approved and same intended use regardless of holding the NASC quality seal or not?
The short answer is yes, just like a food supplement. No unapproved ingredients in treat products that are not in Chapter 6 in the AAFCO official publication, and the ingredients need to be included for the approved purpose.
All right.
Meaning the nutritional benefit.
Next question. If our treat is audited by NASC with a seal on the label, would state officials not challenge our treat product / label?
They wouldn't challenge it if you do it right. And if you're an NASC member, you ought to be doing it right. So, yeah, I would say you should have a high degree of confidence that if you have the NASC seal on a treat product, that it's going to be labeled properly. So, not guaranteed, but it should be.
Next question. Can you choose which products you want audited under the treats program, or would you have to register all treats under your brand?
I probably have to think about that. I mean, it's like asking, can you be half pregnant, right? Can we have adulterated, misbranded treats that you don't check, and then other treats that are okay? I think that's the context. That may not be the context of the question, so I don't want to make a bad assumption. But NAC won't prevent you from marketing a product, but we won't defend you if you have a problem. So if you get in trouble because you're not labeling the product appropriately, or you're making claims that are not allowed, and a state regulator objects to that, just because you're an NASC member, we can't defend that. So you got to be consistent with either health supplement, which is not food, or nutritional supplement or treat, which are food. So same rules for treats as nutritional supplements. You got to follow the rules and be compliant with AAFCO recommendations.
I think another good reminder is that we are not auditing individual products. We are auditing the company as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 7,000 products that NASC members have. So even when we do an audit, if you got 100 products, we're not, and I give the auditors this direction, we're going to pick about 10% of them at random, right? And we're going to check that 10%. And if we see everything is good, then we're going to assume the other 90% are also good. Now, maybe that's a bad assumption, right? So it's not a full on compliance audit. But if something comes up, then we're going to point that out and help you correct it. We're not here to crucify anybody. We're here to keep people out of trouble, not get people out of trouble.
Bill, you might also want to mention our accountability guidelines, because we do have members that don't go through the audit.
Yeah.
And they still need to be accountable and have compliant labels.
Yeah, that's right. So when somebody joins NASC, you fill out an application that defines your company and the scope of your operation, and then there's also members accountability guidelines that needs to be signed by a principal of the company, meaning officer, principal, owner, senior leadership, that these are the rules, and you sign up that you're going to follow these rules, not just for all products that you have. So you can't pick and choose, right? So yeah, even if you're not an audited member, there's still an agreement that you sign with NASC that you know what the rules are. We've communicated those, you're trained, and you're going to follow them. Now, that's not to say that somebody doesn't accidentally make a mistake somewhere. You got new people, you got turnover, you've got a new agency, but it's really important for the, companies if you're dealing with an agency, or especially now with AI, you ask a question to Chat GPT or any other AI platform, you can get back a response that might get you in trouble. So it's up to you to know what the rules are and not just take everything at face value and assume it's okay. It might not be. And again, I always use the example of speeding, right? The speed limit's 75 on the freeway and you're going with the flow of traffic and that's 82, 85 and you get stopped. You're the one speeding and gets the ticket, right? Your defense is not, well, everybody else was doing it. You're the one that got stopped. So you have to understand what the rules are and you're accountable for those, audited or not, right? There's an agreement, as Jennifer said, that you have to sign. That's part of the initial discussion in joining NASC.
All right, next question. For the health claims we want to make on products, would animal studies be needed to substantiate those claims?
The short answer is yes, you should have substantiation of claims. Now, we don't evaluate whether or not you can back up the claim, right? So we don't evaluate the efficacy or truthfulness of your claim. We evaluate the form of the claim to make sure it's within the allowable guidelines for the target species that you're marketing the product. That's going to be covered extensively on day one, May 19 of our annual conference with our legal team, Venable. So if you want a real deep dive into that, come to the annual conference and be sure you hit day one because that's going to be a real focus. And that's backed by popular demand. We touched on that last year and it was so popular, we've readjusted our program and have a full day on that pretty much on the opening day of the conference. So short answer is, yes, you should be able to substantiate the claim, and you ought to be able to do that with a statistically significant population in the target species. So let me emphasize, there's really two areas of risk here. There's regulatory risk. There's also risk from legal risk, FTC or plaintiff's attorneys that can challenge whether or not you can substantiate that claim. So you want to be aware there's two risk avenues, legal, regulatory, right? You don't want to go sideways in either one. And I'm not an attorney, so don't take that as legal advice. If you need legal advice, consult an attorney, come to our annual conference where attorneys will be there. But I think they're going to tell you the same thing that I just said. But I want to just hit you with that disclaimer.
And I would just add that those types of claims are typically more appropriate on a food supplement or health supplement, not a treat.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Does this program change anything with state registrations if you enroll in the treat program?
No.
And then is the regulatory status treat validated by FDA and US Customs, or can we be challenged by them in case of importing treats into the US, for example?
I don't know of a single case where Customs has held anything up. It's just like any other food product. But if you've got unapproved ingredients or claims that are not allowable, drug claims, then you could get stuck in customs. But if you're compliant with AAFCO treat guidelines, NASC guidelines for treats, then no, I don't think you should have any problems clearing customs or states for that matter.
All right, next question. Is enjoyment or enrichment intended use limit? I don't understand this question exactly. Is enjoyment or enrichment intended use limit or have a cap on the recommended treating occasion frequency, e.g. times per day or times per week? I think you kind of answered that already.
Yeah. If not, you can email if need further clarification or discussion.
Okay. And then another one says, we have labels for what I think will be 3 treats. Can you review to confirm this before we go to the desk audit?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, and that's a good question, and it gives me an additional point to make. If you're on this webinar, or even if you're not an NASC member, if you have a question, it's not like we'll never talk to you. I talk to people who are non-members all the time that ask me to take a look at their labels, see if they're all right. Regulators send me labels. It doesn't do the industry any good if we let you make a mistake. So even if you're not a member and you want to, shoot by us a label or say these 3 treats, what do you think? Am I going down the right pathway? It doesn't take us that much time to do that, and we'll help you. So, if you want to shoot it, the short answer to the question is yes. We'll check it before we ever do the audit, just like any other pre-audit that we do if you're a member. But even if you're not a member, and you have a question, we'll give you a courtesy review. Why? Because we're pay it forward people, and it doesn't do the industry any good if you make a mistake. So if you got a question, you're not a member, you can still ask us.
And just to chime in, we also do that as part of the sort of informal interview process in determining
Yeah.
whether, you're a good fit for NASC. We're going to look at your website and we're going to look at your labels and your treats and your health supplements and see whether or not we're going to be able to help you and or
Yep.
whether they fit within the box.
Yep. Or you have a formulation issue, you got unapproved ingredients in a food product, or you've got claims that are not going to be, acceptable or jump out, anything diagnosed for anything disease. You mentioned a disease, overt or implied, or claims that are not allowable in food. We look for those and we'll point those things out to you.
All right, we have a couple more questions. Next one is the treats NASC quality seal logo for brands only, or is there something for suppliers as well related to their ingredients to be used in treats?
Well, the blue preferred supplier mark on the bottom. So if you're an ingredient supplier, contract manufacturer, it's not the yellow mark that goes on finished products from the brand. That's the primary supplier, whoever markets the product, purveys the product to the marketplace. Preferred suppliers, the blue mark on the bottom, and that's the one for ingredient suppliers. You got to qualify for that as well, by the way. So you can't just be a preferred supplier and automatically, join NASC and get to use the mark. We check that you're audited independently by somebody we recognize. It can be us, but UL, NSF, to whatever the appropriate CGMPs are. Might be 507, it might be 117, it might be 111, although 111 doesn't technically apply. But anybody upstream, that's the blue mark, not the yellow mark. So if you're not a brand and you're not a member, audited member, those are the only people that can use that yellow quality mark, right? Preferred suppliers, blue mark.
All right, next question. Are functional claims allowed for any type of animal food, e.g. structure function claims about nutrients?
Sure, if they're truthful, not false, and misleading to the public, and nutritionally linked and scientifically substantiated. Let me give you an example. A complete and balanced diet with the appropriate calcium and phosphorus ratios help support strong bones and healthy teeth. Is that a structure function claim? Yes. Is it true? Yes. Calcium, phosphorus are in the AAFCO OP dog food nutrient profile, so it's true. It's nutritionally linked. Taurine can help prevent dilated cardiomyopathy in cats. You got to be playing a little more advanced level to use that claim. But a lot of these examples are in the AAFCO training program. So if you haven't used the training, the AAFCO training or signed up for those, encourage you to possibly check that out. We also do training for stuff. But anyway, short answer to your question. Can you have a structure function claim on a food product? Yes, if it's true and it's substantiated and nutritionally linked. Okay.
All right, and somewhat related, does NASC have a list of ingredients that serve as health supplement ingredients versus food supplement ingredients?
Yes, but remember, it's the intended use connected to the ingredient that establishes how that product is regulated or the benefit. So let me give you an example. If you've got vitamin E, D-alpha tocopherol, and you say this is a great source of vitamin E, and there's 10 IUs in a vitamin, pet vitamin, a food supplement, that's okay. It's AAFCO approved. It's in Chapter 6. Use that same vitamin E, and you say this is a powerful antioxidant that helps neutralize free radicals. They're unstable oxygen molecules associated with the aging process. That's a non-nutritional benefit. B vitamins in calming products. So it's the intended use not the ingredient that establishes how that product is regulated. Why? Because that's what the law says.
All right. Finally, will there be a separate section in NARS for treats?
Yes.
All right.
So
Easy
I
enough.
can jump in here
Yeah.
too a
Go ahead.
little
Go ahead.
bit.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so it's going to be the exact same system, but when you log in, and what you're typically used to seeing is add product. Well, now that's been broken out. It'll say add supplement and add treat. And then you'll have screens that are very specific to that type of product. You know, for example, with supplements, you tend to add quantities, you have active, you have inactive. While treats, you don't have that, you know, so there's going to be some differences. But short answer is it will be within the same system.
And you pick the product type, you just check the box. It says treats. It's a drop down menu.
Correct.
Jenny, put up your slide for the annual conference.
You got it.
We can answer a few more questions as we have time, but we'll get that.
Ryan, can you take over the last couple of questions?
I can. This is kind of a cute question. What are the cats' names in the QA slide?
So those are both my cats. The orange tabby cat is named Marmalade. That cat was living in a culvert under our driveway, and I can't stand to see a hungry animal, so I started feeding him. And about a week later, he's in the house sleeping on the bed, and he's just the best cat. Yanaha, who's the calico we adopted from the Phoenix Humane Society. She was rescued from the Navajo Indian Reservation, and her name means brave in Navajo. So yeah, she's curled up in the sink and the half bath. So Yanaha and Marmalade, they're just the best cats. I've always been a dog guy until I got adopted by a cat. Now I found out at our annual conference last year I'm a cat bro.
A cat bro.
Yeah.
Next question. Since treats are given occasionally, will you need to include feeding directions on the label as you would for a food supplement following AAFCO guidelines?
So I'll give you the Bill Burkholder answer. Depends. Jennifer, you want to answer this question?
Sure.
You might. Yeah. I mean, if you make the nutritional guarantee, go ahead, Jennifer.
We will be following AAFCO's regulations, and if you read it carefully, the directions for treats are not the same as a food supplement. The food supplement is going to have to include the frequency, the amount per weight, duration, where a treat doesn't have to give those specifics, only if you're claiming it's complete and balanced. That's the trigger that requires the complete feeding directions. Otherwise, it can be as simple as give us a treat, something like that.
But you should have some directions on there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All right, the last question. Will you be reviewing treats for PFLM updates?
Yes. And that's a separate section in the website. There's pre and post PFLM. So short answer again is yes. And I see there's another question popped in. If you ask a question that we didn't have time to answer here, again, you can always email us. And if these webinars are beneficial and you've got suggestions for other topics or continuations you want us to do, something else, you want a similar webinar on health supplements or large format products that are health supplements, we can certainly do that. So if you've got suggestions for other webinars that would be helpful, regulators, you can pipe in on that too if you want something you run into that you see is becoming increasingly problematic or people need additional education. Send them to us, suggest it. We'll consider another webinar. We'll do more of them, or we'll put it on a topic at the annual conference or an AAFCO meeting or something.
So we're a little bit past the time. I don't know if you want to try to answer these last two questions here.
I mean, I've got time. If you guys, I don't know how many people are still in, but if people are still sticking in, we can stay.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and ask these two last questions. Could you say a supplement is great tasting, and that livestock enjoy consuming it? Not Not sure if I totally understand the question, but
Tastes great, and the horses like it. I think you can.
I think you can say that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then lastly, just a comment from Lydia Gray, who is an awesome horse person. She wants to remind everybody that the NASC quality seal does not mean that that specific product has been approved. And she's right. We do not evaluate on a per product basis. What we evaluate is the processes and procedures that monitor, manage, and reproduce a high degree of quality for those products.
Thanks, Lydia.
Yes, thank you. And that is it.
All right. Again, thank you very much. Really appreciate everybody attending. Thanks to the compliance team, for your help, participation, and not just the people who are on the call as speakers, but our entire compliance team. Kelly, Miriam, Giselle, as well, and Jenny, Bill Parker. So, all right. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. We'll make the slides available to you. And again, you have a great week, great rest of the week, and good weekend.